Thanks for downloading Pave the Way Podcast. On this show, your host, Greg Helbeck, interviews the top minds in real estate, business, and personal development to help you crack the code so you can grow your business and, more importantly, grow your life. Get ready for another game-changing episode. If you want to learn how to master your day and become a productivity monster, download Greg's free guide on daily personal productivity for free at www.pavetheday.com. That's Pave the Day, spelled DAY.com. Now it's time for today's episode. Enjoy.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm your host, Greg Helbeck, and I am here today with my buddy, Erik Hatch, fellow multiplier. I feel like recently, of all of the interviews, we've been doing like the multiplier series. So you're like the fifth guy we've had in the last 2 weeks on the show. And Erik, man, I'm really excited for our interview. We connected, what was it? It's like 3 months ago now. Time flies, man. I cannot believe it's been 3 months since we've been in Tulum together. But anyway, we were chilling by the pool, I think the last full day there, and you were just talking about, you know, your journey and stuff, and I was blown away. So I really appreciate you coming on the show as a guest, and I'm looking forward to diving into some valuable content with everyone.
Well, a couple things here, Greg. First of all, I'm your sloppy fifths here, and that doesn't feel so good. I want to get that out. Those other guys didn't mean anything to you. It's I'm the only one that mattered, right?
Absolutely, you hit it right on the head.
And then, sure enough, we did spend some time poolside, and there's this group of multipliers is such an awesome group of men who are business owners and the smartest money guys that are out there and wicked investors. And then every once in a while, a doofy realtor finds their way through, and there I find myself as the doofy realtor, because I'm listening to these guys. Greg, you're the wonder kid in the group, whether you realize it or not. You were like I would make a Doogie Howser reference, but you were too young to even know who Doogie Howser is. Okay, you are this wonder kid that we're all like, oh my gosh, this guy at this ripe young age, he's got it like figured out and dialed in. So all y'all listening, and I say y'all like I'm not from Fargo, North Dakota. All y'all listening right now, listen up to Greg, because he is wicked smart. And I'm a doofy realtor who I think has invested, and I still invest, but I invest in people. I invest in houses and real estate too, but people is where I have sharpened my sword.
Absolutely. And I'm really excited to dive into that, because you are your book alone was super helpful for me, as I hired a couple people after we were in Tulum, which actually was a big reason I decided to make a couple hires, man. It was like from talking to you and things like that. So before we get into that, so can you just tell everyone, because you didn't come from, being a successful broker investor, so you came from some pretty humble beginnings. So if you could just kind of go into your story for a few minutes here, and then we'll get into some of the main meat and potatoes.
So I was trailer trash early on in my life, and I can say that proudly. If you've ever lived in a trailer, like there's like living in a trailer, and then there's living in a trailer that gets condemned when you moved out, and that was my story.
Wow.
My dad abandoned my family when I was super young, and my mom was this amazing woman who worked her tail off, and worked 3 jobs just to keep us 1 foot out of the welfare bucket, right? Like just this tremendous upbringing, and grew up in a single parent home and had incredible parenting from my mom, just this great mentorship. But I didn't know jack about business or money or entrepreneurship. This was all, this was what happened on the other side of the tracks for me. Like I had no idea whatsoever that there was a world and a prowess out there in which my skills, my God-given skills, could be put to good use. Smart, maybe. Savvy, no. I didn't know what to do or where to do it. And so I've kind of stumbled my way through. So fast forward, I lived in Fargo, North Dakota since I was born. I'm still here. And every time I think I'm done, God smacks me back and he says, I'm not done with you yet, kid. And so I love Fargo. Besides it being cold, it's a tremendous place. If you don't like things that are pretty, you shouldn't move to Fargo either, because the people are fantastic, but the landscape is pretty rough. Despite the topography lack that Fargo has, this has been a tremendous place to grow a business. And before I grew a business, Greg, I graduated from college. My mom had just died. I was orphaned and I didn't know what to do, and my church had taken me in. The church I was baptized and raised at, and I loved my time. There was a place I buried my mom, and all of a sudden there was a place that I went to work full time, and I did youth ministry and worship leading for about a decade. And like, don't get me wrong, like I love me some Jesus, but I also swear a little and dig some beer, right? So just want to put that out there. So working at this church was an awesome way for me to give back and to really heal and figure out who I was going to be. And this church is a large church, man, like 5,000 people in the congregation.
Oh,
And,
wow. I did not know that, man. I thought it was a small,
you want to talk about having
church.
5,000 bosses? That was a learning curve. And I broke everything. You know, I tested every limit and boundary, and all of a sudden I started creating things. I created a worship service that was over at a pizzeria and a bar, because I don't think the church was supposed to be like just this country club that took care of itself. It needed to be out there doing big things. And I created a nonprofit movement that was a virtual simulation of being homeless for 30 hours. So you'd fast and sleep outside in a cardboard box, and you'd let go of all your necessities. And I rallied together not just my church, but in our peak, we rallied together about 25 other churches and schools, and we raised $1 million to make a difference for the homeless community in Fargo. And we empowered like all these people. And Greg, I'm like, man, this is awesome. And the harder I worked, the same I made.
Yeah, in the job world.
And the savvier I got and the more sharp and astute I became, I got my 3% raise a year. And for so many people, they're on that grind right now. And that's a fine grind. But I recognize that God had given me a passion and a desire to build and to risk. And my family my wife and I were going through some infertility. We couldn't get pregnant. And she ended up miscarrying a few times through all these treatments. And the only way I could become a dad, Greg, is if I funded it. And so I left from full-time ministry into full-time real estate in 2011 because I needed to fund my life. But I still wanted to be this do-gooder. I still wanted to be this leader and this impact person of people. And then I had this entrepreneurial itch that was being unintentionally held down, not by the church's fault, but simply by the church's design, that I wasn't able to really risk because there were so many stops that were within there. 10 years later now, I think I have 18 businesses as of today, and I get a chance to do some pretty big things in the world. And I'm still just as dumb as I ever was, but I'm having a lot more fun.
You are a very impressive gentleman, to say the least. I mean, we were talking down in Tulum on some of the stuff you guys were doing in the business. And we're all sitting around you, and you were like the guru in a good way. And we were like, man, I got to get to that level. I got to get to Hatch's level. So that is that's an interesting thing you shared with listeners. Like, you knew that you were doing the right thing with the church, but it was the vehicle. It's like you're trying to go 100 miles an hour in a 2002 Ford Focus. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's actually a really good analogy.
Yeah.
As somebody who's taken a Ford Focus to the top speed of 42 miles an hour. Yeah. No, Greg, that's a great analogy. And I think that for a lot of people, you think that this was difficult for me because jumping into a for-profit business, having worked in a nonprofit, having come from meager means, I felt guilty for having money. Yeah. I had self-diagnosed wealth guilt, and it was this shame where I'm like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have this. And so I would self-destruct. I would make some bad decisions. I would hire people, but it's like, how much do I need to save? How much do I need to spend? What do I need to do? I remember making my first hire, Greg, and putting my first $12 an hour employee out there, scared to death. Just to run my real estate team today is now $215,000 a month.
Just to run, just to keep the lights on.
That doesn't include cost of goods sold. That doesn't include commissions I pay to people. That's just to keep the lights on, to keep my staff, my marketing, my office, all those things running. And so I've had to figure out how to get over my wealth guilt and to understand that this is my responsibility, is to take great care of people. And it's my responsibility and my opportunity, not an obligation, but an opportunity to do great good in the world. And that money makes more sense in my hands as somebody who hopefully has the right heart for it and has the right intention behind it, rather than being self-serving, which is the core value and belief in my leadership style, is that I'm a servant leader to the core. And that servant leadership means that it's others before self. It's not like that word humility comes up a lot. Like, we need to be humble. And I used to think that being humble meant I think less of myself, And that's not true at all. Being humble means that you think of yourself less. And that's what a servant leader is. Hopefully they're going to be humble and they'll think of others before self. And turns out my world has multiplied, literal and figurative, in so many ways because I have learned to serve my brothers and my sisters.
I love that, man. I love that. And I'm very excited to really get into some of your leadership principles, on this episode, because that was a big takeaway that I got from your book, and then just being one of your friends and obviously meeting down in Mexico. So before we get into that, Erik, I just want to give everyone a quick snapshot of the brokerage business that you grow that is tremendous. So can you just, I was a guest on a podcast today, and one of the guys' questions was, can you brag about yourself for a little bit? And I was like, so I'll repeat the question. So just, can you give everyone a little high level perspective of where your brokerage and some of your other businesses are today? Because you are a seriously successful entrepreneur. And I just want everyone to really know that, this guy is the real deal. Hashtag the real deal.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm really proud of what I've done. I try not to be prideful, but I'm really proud of what I've done. And I got into real estate, as I said, full-time in 2011. I opened up my own brokerage in 2014. And so now over the last 7 years, that brokerage and we're a team, Rich. Like, we function just as a team. We don't have any independent agents that are here. Yeah. It's all reliant on our ecosystem and our marketing and our support. Last week, we just passed our 5,000th home sold.
It's amazing. Oh my gosh.
And so we right now have pended and closed about 560 homes this year. So we're pacing, Greg, right now to close 1,300 to 1,400 transactions in Fargo, North Dakota, where the entire 2 counties that we serve is 250,000 people.
That is amazing. That's a serious market share too. I mean, holy cow.
So we have about a 10% market share here. And then I've expanded to 4 other markets, 2 in Minnesota. We're a border city. We share the river with Minnesota. And so 2 of my markets are in Minnesota, small towns, and 2 are in North Dakota, medium-sized towns. By medium-sized towns, I mean like 80,000 people and 60,000 people. And so those are the markets that we're serving. My team in total, we're 53 people as of today. And the average realtor in the United States sells about 8 homes a year. Of my team, even if and half of them produce, half of them sell, and the other half support.
Yeah.
But they're averaging about 25 transactions per head if they all were selling. So we're running a pretty large team. We're one of the top 50 real estate teams in the country out of Fargo, North Dakota, and we got here pretty quick.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you just started. You became a realtor in 2011. That was only 10 years ago. It's amazing. And I'm just saying this not to, you have done a lot in a decade. What's that Tony Robbins quote? You'll be you underestimate what you can do in a year, or whatever that. Yeah. I think it's overestimate what you can do in a year and underestimate what you can do in a decade. And I mean, man, you have absolutely knocked out of the ballpark. So before we get into some leadership things, because that's, like I said, that's really where I think you're
Greg, I wasn't done bragging.
Oh, keep going. Keep going.
I'm totally kidding. It was funny in my head because usually I'm known for being a real estate coach as well as because I spend 2 days a week in my real estate brokerage. That should be known as we're about an $8 million company, and I spend 2 days a week in it. And then my coaching company, which is where I put a lot of my energy, we're about a $2.5 million company, and I spend 3 days a week in that. And I'm more of a producer in that. I'm a CEO in my real estate brokerage. I don't sell houses anymore, but as a coach, I'm still coaching people actively. And,
you're still involved.
That's just a company of 5 people.
Yeah, that's a small, it's like little coaching for you. What is the niche that you guys obviously coach? I'm sure real estate agents, how to scale and things like that, and how to grow leaders.
Yeah, we're coaching real estate teams, especially on how to master leadership and team structure so that they can maximize purpose and maximize profit. While taking great care of people. And then my partner, Robbie, is the top lead conversion guy in the country. Just unbelievable at getting a client to make a commitment to an agent and helping the agents to figure out how to not be douchey salespeople.
That's amazing.
That's our tagline. No, it should.
That's amazing. That's a great sales letter. Like sales letter. You're like, read this if you don't want to be a douchey real estate agent. Hi, my name is Erik Hatch, and my partner and I over the years I love the internet marketing stuff. So follow-up question on the real estate brokerage business, because a lot, like you said, a lot of people have their license and a lot of people have brokerages. Like, what if you had to boil it down? I know there's, this would be a 3-hour conversation at the pool in Tulum, but like at the end of the day, I'm a big 80-20 guy. What would you say were the critical things that happened that allowed you to scale that real estate business to where it is today in a relatively compressed time frame? Because it's very impressive to see that, especially in a small niche market like Fargo.
Sure. Yeah. So there's 5 laps to real estate, and I'm gonna. So if you're running a relay, it's not a 4x4, it's a 5x4, if you will, right? There's going to be 5 laps. The first lap is you got to be able to find the deals, and so to find the deals, if you don't have any money, means that you have to have some savvy to you. You have to have some hustle. God didn't make me fast, but He made me a hustler. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when it comes to it, I cared a lot more about mind share than I did market share. Mind share is being front of mind with people when they think of real estate. So that meant the inexpensive or free way that I had was personal relationships and social media. And so I made sure that I was actively involved in my community to grow personal relationships. In fact, think of the 8 years I had at my church prior to me getting into real estate full time. I was a giver and not a taker. I was a servant and not somebody who was looking to be self-served. And it was unbeknownst to me that in my DNA, I was establishing a really great business model.
Yeah.
Then I get into real estate full time, and now it's like, okay, I got to be my own self-marketer, right? You can either have a marketing company work for you. The best is to actually have reviews and other people sing your praises. But when you're starting out, you're your own Flavor Flav, you're your own hype man. Greg, 100%. You don't know who Flavor Flav is, but some of the people listening.
He's the guy with the clock around his neck, right?
He is. Yeah, he wasn't even really a rapper. He was just a hype man who just danced around on stage and got the crowd excited. So I got so intentional on social media of letting people know what I did. And I've made a lot of mistakes on social media, but what I do now is what I prescribe to my team members and to my coaching clients. And that is to follow the Gary V model of $1.80. Literally write down Gary V's $1.80 strategy. He has some awesome videos that talk about how your job should be to give your 2 cents to different communities and contributors. Like, you're not there to take, you're there to give. And so to go to 90 different places a day and to contribute to the conversation. Like, Greg, if it's your birthday, I'm not gonna just post on your Facebook, well, dude, happy birthday, man. Instead, I'm gonna get on the phone and call you, because how many people actually call you on your birthday?
Not many. Your grandparents and your parents and, close friends and things like that.
Yeah, it's a small handful at best. And if you want to be remarkable, and my goal for people and my goal for myself is to be remarkable, the root of that word is to do things so that people will remark about you. And you have to do that by contributing or being massively entertaining. And most people aren't massively entertaining. And so you need to be a contributor to other people. If you can do both, but certainly always contribute first. So the first thing you would do, the first lap, if you want to be really successful as a realtor, is you need to be great at marketing. And 100%. You can buy your way to the top, but that is not a sustainable model whatsoever. So the grind is to master your sphere, to master your influence, and to capture mind share through your marketing. That's lap number 1. Lap number 2 is you need to be able to convert that person, right? There is now there's a flow and a go. If Greg, you are somebody who's in my sphere, we went to college together, and I see that you have now announced that you're moving back to Fargo. You went to the big city in Minneapolis for a while, and now you're moving back because you fell in love with a girl. Well, my goal is now I need to be able to actually reach out and not do the douchey thing that so many other people do. And that is, hey, Greg, let's go out for coffee. I want to learn all about your business.
Oh.
And so we go to coffee and we chat about your business. And then after 45 minutes of me listening to you, I turn it into a sales pitch. And now I'm trying to tell you, man, I could be a great realtor for you. And here's all the things I want to do. Like, I've devalued that entire relationship.
Yeah.
I've just used you, and you want to defecate all over me. That's where we end up with.
Dude, that's so true. Especially now, people do that too on like your DMs on social media. And it's like, it's embarrassing how terrible that strategy is.
Yeah.
And it burns a bridge that was there for freaking years.
Yeah. And so to converting leads that are Mets or have not Mets, those are the 2 kinds, right? Converting those people take different art forms. And so we teach our coaching clients and we teach our realtors what they need to do to really come from contribution instead of coming from the take. That if you're going to have a business conversation with somebody, tell them you're going to have a business conversation. They will be disarmed if I say, hey, Greg, can I talk business with you for 2 minutes? Right? I've now framed it in such a way where I'm not pooing on like the relationship that I falsely cared about. Now I'm just trying to go for the close. But before I even go for that close, and before I even go to talk about that conversion, Greg, what I need to do is I need to learn about you and connect with you and find out what makes you tick, and then ask permission. Hey, can we talk business tomorrow? There's just one thing I want to talk about. By the way, are you going to the game tonight? Right? Like, we're going to continue to build the relationship and not abuse it. So that's number 2, is converting the deal. That's
super important, by the way. I mean, that is like, if you can get I say this to people all the time. If you get all the leads in the world and you market your face off, but you can't have a real conversation with someone and solve a problem, you're SOL,
Yep. People get transactionalized far too often, and it's ruining your relationships. And the automation in our industries is ruining our relationships too.
Totally, man. Totally. That's a great 2 pillars. So what's the third one now?
So third one is you need to take that person from contract to contract. You need to take them from getting an exclusive right to represent contract to getting a pended deal on the house they're selling or the house they're buying. That, of course, is industry specific, right? If your main listening audience are investors, they still need to be able to take that relationship, whether you're sitting at that person's kitchen table or you're finding a deal online, and you need to be able to bring that to consummation, right?
100%.
That consummation piece is usually the highest compensated piece, but I don't think it's the highest skill level piece. It simply takes the first 2 steps done exceedingly well so that that person has an at-bat in the first place.
Yeah. Are you referring more to like transaction coordination at that point, and like, or like just...
No, that's actually number 4 is servicing. Servicing the contract. Yep. No, lab number 3 is going from contract to contract, and it's negotiating, it's knowing the numbers, it's having that kind of intellect and mobility so that your investors are buying for themselves.
Yeah.
In my world, we're making it so that that other person is fully educated. They know what they're getting themselves into. And that education piece is super important. And I promise you that your ability to capture that person as a client and your ability to win them over is on the other end of an hour-long conversation of you asking a plethora of questions. Because 100%. We make a lot of assumptions. I'll give you an example, Greg. I'll assume that every seller wants to get top dollar for their house, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get top dollar. Do you know how many 88-year-old grandmas call us and they say, I don't care about the money. This is pain I'm going through right now. I just lost my husband. I can't take care of this house anymore. I'm overwhelmed with emotion. And yet we as salespeople, we as investors, and we as business people spend far too much time telling them what we think they want to hear instead of shutting up, asking great questions, and listening to what they're going through. That person will be yours forever if you will build the relationship and listen far more than you talk. And this is ironic because you're asking me all these questions and I'm talking all the time, but I would much rather, when we sat by the pool, Greg, that was uncomfortable for me because I'd rather ask 1,000 questions about you. But I had 3 pina coladas and I was feisty that day, you know?
I was feeling good too after a couple Coronas right in Mexico. Yeah, no, that's a great, and I want everyone to make sure they rewind or definitely re-listen to this episode, but at the end of the day, Erik just made such a great point. What do they call that in Sandler? Spilling your candy in the lobby or whatever, where you just vomit information out and you get assumptive. And I mean, I see so many people do, they just say silly things to prospects. And if they just wouldn't say something silly or get too weird with the questions, they would have had that client because they would have ultimately solved the problem. That like bad questions just don't get to the truth, and the good open-ended questions that really get to the root of the issue, it demonstrates to that other person that you're there to solve their problem, and then they realize that on their own because you're asking good questions. So,
one of the most powerful things that your listening audience can do is to bring along a notebook and to take notes on what the person says, because what that's telling them, not in your phone, not just like going through and walking, but actively listen. Show that you have a deep and genuine interest in what they're saying. That notebook will bring you more clout and credibility because then you're repeating back to that person what it is they said. There's a strategy called negative reverse selling. And the way it works, Greg, is if you are my client, as an example, and I'm trying to list your home, I'm not going to say, Greg, we're a great marketing company and we're going to service your listing and here's how the process goes. I'm going to say, Greg, what's really important to you in this? And what does great service look like to you? And tell me how we would let you down in this transaction. How honest do you want me to be? Do you think open houses are important to you? Do you really care about marketing? What do you think great marketing looks like? I'm asking you all these questions. I'm taking diligent notes. And then I get to say, well, Greg, great news. I'm going to create a customized plan. And by the way, nobody wants a one size fits all. Everybody wants a customized.
100%.
So Greg, based on what you said, I want to create a customized plan for you so that you can have an unbelievable experience. And here's what I heard you say is really important. Boom, 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 boom. And now they've identified great marketing is important and great servicing is important and great communication is important. And then when they come to negotiate on price or in my world, commission, it's easy for me to say, I understand that you're looking for a deal on commission and you're not willing to pay 7%, but you've already told me that great communication and great servicing and great marketing are there for you. Which of these do I need to cut? Because you told me this is really important. I don't want you to get a bad flavor and a bad taste in your mouth. And I can't tell you, Greg, we protect our commissions more and more when we ask more and more questions because it's now about what they said and not about what we said.
Man, that is gold. Everyone needs to re-listen to this because this is if you're in any sort of business, so like whether it's real estate or not, this is absolutely just phenomenal communication dialogue we're doing right now. So Erik, that's a golden nugget that I guarantee you that'll make people tens of thousands of dollars just from that little excerpt right now. I got to have that go viral on TikTok or something.
I'm on TikTok. I'm hip with the kids. So
are you? Yeah.
So 2 more laps, and these will go fast because I know I'm rambling on this a little bit, Greg. Lap number 4 is the servicing lap. That's the transaction closing. That's the coordination. That's your admin team stepping in. If you don't have an admin team, you are the admin team.
Yeah.
And so it's making sure that you're delivering really high level service because the biggest complaint people will have in any of this, regardless of your industry, is communication.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
And setting the expectation and then overreaching on that. I'll give you an example. Through high school and college, I put myself through school by waiting tables and tending bar. And I worked at a Mexican restaurant in college called Paradiso. And I would go up to tables every time and I would lie to them. Not because I'm deceitful, but because I was setting myself up for a big win. And I'd say to them, hey, what's up? My name's Erik. Super excited to take care of you. I'm going to get you drinks in just a minute, but I want you to know I just got triple sat. Or we're short 2 servers tonight, or the kitchen's really backed up, whatever it may be. I want you to know I'm going to do everything I can to give you great service. But if I'm forgetting something, like throw a chip at me, don't be mad. Like just know that you need to get my attention and I want to give you really great service. Well, turns out I gave great service almost every time. And if their expectation was at an 8 and I delivered at a 14, how do you think that impacted my tips, Greg? And how do you think that impacted their experience? Because I framed what was about to happen by not talking about best case scenario, but talking about worst case scenario. And that framing early on is giving them the mindset of, okay, I'm lowering my expectations. Now, with my team members, I do the exact opposite. I tell them the high expectations I have for them. I'm not going to tell them I have low expectations. I'm talking about an experience. I'll say lower your expectations. For people, heighten your expectations.
I love that. Well, just under promise and over deliver. That's what you did
Always.
with this.
But with people, I'm going to tell you, Greg, if you ever came into my world and you were one of my team members, you would know without a shadow of a doubt how talented and capable and opportunistic your life is. And it's on the other side of you working really hard. And I'm going to work with you to help your dreams come true. I work for you, Greg. You don't work for me.
Gold right there. That was the nugget I pulled out of your book. One of the many nuggets. I'm excited to get into the leadership conversation here in a few minutes. So as we transition out of the real estate into leadership, what's the final pillar, Erik?
Lap number 5, it's your past clients. How are you going to get them back to step number 1? And most people don't have a plan for their past clients, Greg. Most people don't. If you're an investor and you're buying from somebody who maybe is an investor, don't you think you should nurture that relationship because they're likely to have other properties? And don't you think that Gam who just sold her house to you has other old friends that probably need to sell? Like that's the piece that so many people fail is they don't have a plan on that. They just go back and they start the 4 laps, but that 5th lap is where the real wealth is at.
Oh man, that's so true. And I want to drive that point home with a quick story about literally that happening to me. I remember we did a deal. This was a couple years ago. We bought this property from this really old lady, sweetheart, 2-year sales cycle. Like she wasn't ready to sell for a while. long story short, bought the house. It was the easiest transaction ever. It was just, we locked it up, bought it, put it back on the market. Freaking probably 4 months later, I get a call from random lady, never heard of her before. Oh, are you Greg? Oh, I got the same house, like 50 G's on the second house. So that's one transaction we made like well over two transactions we made well over 6 figures from one seller referring me to the other lady. And like those little things really matter. It's the same thing in brokerage. It's no joke. And it's so much easier to sell those people because they already know what you're about. You know, you're not like cold traffic is a whole other story, you know, but like with a warm person you've already followed up with, it's so, such gold, man. People, they hear that, but then they're still trying to dig up new leads, which is important. But at the end of the day, I always say the database, if you just work your database, you can make so much money just with all the stuff you already have in there. Like they've already opted in. They're already your customers, you know?
I have 5,000 past clients right now, and I'm activating some of my biggest funds I've ever activated to go after these. It is amazing. 100% intentional. And man, we've messed up a lot as we filled these 5,000. So what's really hard to do is to, after 5 years, go back and try to be like, hey, haven't forgotten about you. Well, I did it for 5 years. So
yeah, no, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Those are great pillars, or the laps. Sorry, I keep saying pillars. So the biggest thing, you know, when we were in Tulum, I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but you were talking about leadership to a few of us around the pool, sipping some martinis and whatnot. And man, Gavin, Timms, and I were just blown away. We're like, because we have like a smaller-ish businesses, and you know, like when I say smaller, like, you know, less employees and things like that. And we were hearing some of the stuff you're doing, and we're like, man, how did you do all this?
Your margins sure beat mine any day.
Yeah, the margins are good. I will say the margins are nice.
I'm running Costco, Greg.
Costco real estate.
Yeah, that'd be a pretty cool place to be. Is, hey, you know your margins, and you're not going to make tens of thousands on each deal, but you know the consistent process, and that's going to make you millions when you know it.
100%. It's those little wins. But you were talking leadership, and I mean, I read your book, which we'll put a link to that book in the show notes on. I know you're listening to this. But at the end of the day, there's so many good things in that book. Obviously, we're not going to have, you know, time to cover everything today, but at the end of the day, I think your ability to lead, at least from my perspective, is amazing. Just your ability to influence people in our mastermind. What would you say are the 2 or 3 biggest leadership principles that you live by that we could cover on the rest of this show? So people listening can say, you know what, that's something that makes sense. And I think that's something I'm going to have to implement on my business so we can turn around and grow as people and grow as a company.
This is what I start the book with, and then this is what I end the book with. And it's 2 different things, but it's a way in which to try to give voice to servant leadership. In the office that I'm sitting in right now, that we're recording this podcast, I sat with a guy named Mark Anderson probably 5 or 6 years ago. Mark has a reverse form of ADD where he can't consume enough information. So Mark is 4 times a doctor. He has his doctorate 4 times over. Mark has opened up banks, and he's the serial entrepreneur and just one of the most brilliant minds that I've ever come across. Mm-hmm. And he's sitting with me, and he's like, Erik, what do you want your life to be about? And I think I gave him some sort of bullcrap answer, like, man, it'd be really cool if like I had this awesome autobiography of my life. Like, Erik climbed Kilimanjaro, and Erik knows how to spell Kilimanjaro. Like that, it would be this chest thumping, like, look what I did kind of life.
Yeah.
And then he unpacked that with me. He's like, man, that doesn't sound authentic to you. I'm like, I know, but I think that's what I'm supposed to say, is like, I'm supposed to achieve all these great things in life. And as we got to talking, Mark said to me, Erik, wouldn't it be better to be a chapter in somebody else's book? And I was like, whoa, hold up. I got goosebumps all over my body. It was that moment in time where the clouds parted and the sun shone down on Mark as this like prophet in my life. And it's so much better to be in somebody else's book than to have this, like, this story that'll be written about me, if it ever is. And the fact that I even have my own book is a touch of ego, but I feel like I have this message that I need to put out there, that having your own book matters not, but being a chapter in Greg's book is what gives me real life and real satisfaction. Zig Ziglar says that you can have everything in life you want if you help enough others get what they want. And on this show, we're talking about investing and the investment into people. I think about your kids, right? Greg, you don't have kids yet that you know of, but I have kids. And my son had his review with his teacher a couple days ago, and he had been struggling in school a little bit. And now she's like, oh my gosh, he's like a protege now. And he was like a proficient in all these different areas. And I had this proud parent moment that's far better than me selling a home or winning some award or having some accolades. Those things don't feel like a satisfactory bite once you see your kid like crush it. And Greg, in my 18 businesses, I have about 75 kids.
That's amazing.
People that I get to watch and their success, I know my fingerprints are a part of, and they don't always end well, right? I've trained some of my competition in this market.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I'm watching them succeed. And a part of me is like, oh, screw you.
Yeah, right.
But the mature part of me, and that mature part doesn't always show up, but that mature part of me is like, oh, I got to help that person on this journey. Like it's this unbelievable moment of satisfaction in life. It's the best investing I can possibly do. And it's leadership because it's others before self. It's helping and making sure that somebody else will be successful. And if they are, you'll find your success. So that's number one, Greg.
That's golden, by the way. People definitely cannot take that lightly, because what Erik just said, if you just implement that one thing from the show on the 10 things we've spoken about, that will literally change your life. So, I mean, I just want people to realize the importance behind that statement you made, that principle you shared.
Yeah, thanks for that. Number two is, Greg, you have big dreams and big aspirations, right? You want to do big things in life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're called to it. And some people aren't necessarily called to it to take huge risks. But my guess is if somebody's listening to an investment podcast, it's on their heart is that they are looking for more abundance of something. And if you want to go really high in life, you have to have balance. And I'm not talking work-life balance. Work-life balance is a bunch of bull crap. It's all just life. I have a career and a lifestyle. I don't have a job. I don't, and if you want to go really high, think if you were walking on a tightrope, Greg, that's tied between two buildings, right? You're on this tightrope. Well, you're going to have your hands out, your arms out for balance. You have to have this ability to make sure that you are not leaning one way or leaning the other. And that balance is messed up for most of us. Because here's what we do is we take what I first led with, and we take with our ability to serve other people, that we want to be a chapter in other people's books, that we're designed to serve. In fact, Ephesians 2:10 says that we're God's handiwork, created in his image to do good works that are already set aside for us to do. And it's literally the purpose of life, Greg, is to serve. And so we'll put that arm out. This is our serving arm. And like, this feels good and natural. I don't care if you like Jesus or not. Like, we feel better when we serve, right?
100%.
And so
100%.
That arm is the easy arm to put out. But the other arm, that's for other people to help you. And that's the hard thing to do, Greg. That's the piece that is so unbelievably painful for people, is to ask for help and to show vulnerability and to show weakness, to know to other people that you don't have your shit figured out. Yes, I said Jesus and shit all in a 2-minute time frame. So be it. This other arm is meant for people to help you, and you will not have balance and you will not go exceedingly high if you don't have both arms out, one to serve and one to be served. If you're climbing up a ladder and you get to a certain point, you need to have one hand extended for the rung above you and one hand down to help the people below you. Yes, that makes perfect sense. But if you have balance on a tightrope, and that's what this life is it's balance. And the higher you go, the more you need it. You have to let people help you. I ask my team daily and weekly, how can I improve as a leader? What do I need to do to get better? I am hopefully the most coachable person in my world. That I am. It's tough some days, man. My team will just hit me and barrage me with all the ways in which I suck.
Yeah.
And yet they stick around for longer. They invest more. They perform better because they trust the leadership that I'm providing, because I'm not falsifying who I am. I'm showing up as broken and insecure and somebody who fails often. I'm not a failure, but I'm somebody who fails often. And they know, because I'm fully transparent and asking for their help, that they get to have their fingerprints on me and they get to be a chapter in my book.
Man, that is absolute gold. I'm sure people right now, if they're driving, they just pause it and they're just sitting like this. Just reflecting on that because that was so good. I'm serious. I'm not just saying that because, we're homies, but that's so powerful. And at the end of the day, like you said, I think you actually have a book, Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. She talks about vulnerability. It was literally right by, I can see on your thing there. And it's like, people are scared sometimes to ask for help. And it's like, that's when you need to do it the most. Like, no. And that's the thing now with like social media, like everyone, I do 1,000 deals a month. It's like, no, at the end of the day, everyone's got struggles. Everyone needs help. Everyone, no matter what level you're at, needs help, whether that's business help or personal help, whatever the case is. And I just
Greg,
think, go ahead.
Greg, let me say this quickly. I was with my buddy Greg as well. His name is Greg also. And I was with him, and I found myself being braggadocious, and it just kind of felt gross. And I named that with Greg, and he's super insightful, another prophet in my life. And he said to me, Erik, when you talk about your successes and your wins, it might turn people off. But if you talk about your failures and your shortcomings, people will be drawn to you.
100%.
And
100%.
Yeah, like the higher you go, the more. Like look at politics, man. Why do we hate the politician that's elected or was elected, whatever it may be? Is because they all act like their shit doesn't stink.
Yeah.
Come on now, change the status quo, change the direction, own your mistakes, and watch people support you. They maybe don't like you, but they'll still be like, I can trust him.
Yeah, I respect that. Yeah, he's upfront about that. Yeah, totally, man. No one wants to do that, and that's such a good point because like. Everyone shows the Ferrari, but they don't show the 5 years of eating crap and literally going through the ringer to get those types of things. And I mean, it's just so powerful what you shared about leadership. And I encourage folks to check out your book because we'll have the link in the show notes. It's a phenomenal book. Erik, I know what the book's called, but I want you to tell everyone what's that book called?
So it's called Play for the Person Next to You. Do we have time for one more story? Because I think I want to share it.
Of course we have time for one more story. By the way, disclaimer. Erik looks like a football player on the cover of the book. So I'm pretty sure that's the one you got to get. He's got eye black on and it's a nice picture of handsome Erik. Yeah.
I look like chubby Carson Wentz. He's from North Dakota too.
So on Amazon, that's the book you got to find. So yeah, let's hear the story, man. I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah. I'd rather you buy it on hatchcoaching.com,
hatchcoaching.com.
Amazon, I make like $2 on it, but when I sell it myself, I make like 10. So watch out.
Okay. We'll put it on hatchcoaching.com. There we go.
That's right. So Play for the Person Next to You is a mantra for North Dakota State University. My alma mater is the Fargo football team, and they've won 8 of the last 9 national championships for FCS football. Trey Lance is about to be drafted in the top 5 in the draft. He's from NDSU. Easton Stick, who's the backup quarterback for the Chargers, and Carson Wentz is the starting quarterback was the Eagles, now the Colts. Like, this is a powerhouse institution in FCS. And I've hired a couple of these guys, right? They've been on my team, and we've talked about what it means to be a champion. And they've said that one of the mantras for this college is that you play for the person next to you. And I never understood what that meant. And I'd hear them say it, but I did an activity once, and I changed the activity. I copied it from somebody else, and I do a lot of motivational speaking and public connections. And so I did this activity where I called up 3 volunteers. So I called up Greg and Jeff and Tony. I'm like, all right, guys, here's the parameter. I'm going to give each of you 3 minutes. The goal is to do a 3-minute plank. Now, those of you in the audience, you can't say peep. You can't say a word. Greg, you can talk. Tony, Jeff, you guys can talk. I'll talk. I'll let you know where you're at for time. I'll ask you some questions, but nobody in the audience can say anything. And the goal is to do a 3-minute plank. And so on your mark, get set, go, and everybody's on their elbows and on their toes, and it's all jovial right away. And then it gets a little tougher. And some legs start to do the typewriter move. And you see the sweat dripping off of people's brows. And then I get pretty quiet. At about 2 minutes, I'm just like, who has it in them to get to 3 minutes? That's the goal. And when I did this activity from another speaker, we all got to 3 minutes, and then everybody stopped. And then we watched this motivational video, and he's like, you got more in you. You can do more. Go back, man. And so then we would do the plank again. And I'm like, that's fine, well and good. Like, I get that we have more in us. It's a David Goggins-esque kind of mentality.
Yeah.
When we think we've hit our wall, we still have more to give. And I believe in that. But I took it a different way. And so when I get to 3 minutes, let's say maybe 2 of the 3 are still in there. Greg and Tony are still hanging in. Well, I say, awesome, you hit 3 minutes, and the crowd cheers, and you guys stop. So that's the first lesson, is like, hey, you stopped at 3 minutes, but you had more to give. But then we go into it, and I'm like, hey, Greg, you were really struggling, weren't you? You're like, yeah, man. I didn't think I was going to make it. And Tony's like, I felt pretty good. Tony's this Ironman athlete, just a super strong guy who can push forward. And Jeff was like, yeah, I was just in my head. I couldn't do it. If people weren't even watching, I would have stopped 30 seconds before. Right. And so then I say to you, Greg, and I say to Tony and Jeff, I'm like, hey guys, why didn't you cheer each other on? It's a really simple statement. Like, Greg, you saw that Jeff was super struggling. Why didn't you give him some encouragement? And light bulbs go off in people's head. They're like, oh yeah. You see, this idea, and the name of my book is Play for the Person Next to You. If you have the audacity to cheer on somebody else despite your pain, if you're serving somebody else despite what you're going through, what happens every time is you actually find more strength. You find more tenacity. You can go farther and do more when you're serving other people. Don't believe me? Get in a plank and ignore your own pain and cheer on the person next to you that's struggling and watch what you can do together. So that's the name of my book, Play for the Person Next to You, and that's where it comes from.
That's amazing, man. You are a phenomenal communicator, and I noticed that because all the points that you share that are so valuable, you're able to wrap a great story to really drive that point home, kind of like a hammer hitting a nail into the wood, man. So I'm blown away by this interview. I can't wait to listen to this myself, and I can't wait till we see each other next in Tulum in 9 months or whatever the case may be. So Erik, it has been an honor to have you on here. I definitely want to respect your time. I know you're a man that lives by every 30 minutes, right? You're a 30-minute calendar guy.
Every 30
yeah. So before we wrap up, Erik, if people want to check you out, especially with Hatch Coaching, what is the best web address for them to find you guys at?
Simply hatchcoaching.com.
Hatchcoaching.com. Very easy to type in there in the good old domain. So Erik, I really appreciate you. Do you have a social media too that people can follow you on?
I do. Yeah. I'm on the Facebooks and the Instagrams and not on the Twitter so much. But yeah. And then I'll watch your TikToks. How about that?
There you go. Awesome. Well, Erik, thank you so much for your valuable time today, man. This has been one of my favorite interviews, and I seriously mean that, man. I learned a ton from this. You have a great rest of your day.
All right, buddy. Be well.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Pave the Way Podcast. We hope you got value from today's episode. Make sure you download Greg's free guide on daily personal productivity for free at www.pavetheday.com. That's Pave the Day, spelled DAY.com. If you have any questions or want to reach out, head over to www.pavethewaypodcast.com. We'll see you on the next episode.